And I'm glad it's recording because I have to go into analytics. You may want to, she's okay sitting right with you.
Recording in progress.
It'll be heard, yeah, but the problem will be audio at some point if we have audio comments.
She can turn your audio off. You should turn your audio off.
Turn the volume down and mute it.
Yeah, and then
That's important.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Hi, Karen.
No, she'll hear you through the main one.
Oh, okay.
So you just don't want double audio.
Yes, I get no feedback. We want your feedback. Electrogest. Oh, this is.
And that's up to you if you want your face on there twice.
Can I
or not.
try?
You can share
try
screen.
something?
Yeah. Why don't you try that and then we can know? Because I'm trying to figure out how to know.
Oh, I got it.
The problem with serving the juice is your hands get all sticky.
What?
When you're doing the cup.
Does your screen
My
have
hands
audio
get
on?
all
Is it
sticky.
okay
It
with you
gives
if
me
I
high blood sugar.
Yeah.
Play.
Okay.
I'm wearing too many hats.
Thank you, darling.
So your screen is shareable there.
All right.
I'll be kind of around. In and out. I don't know if I'm here or not or what I'm doing.
That's all
So,
right. I think it'll be okay.
all right. Sounds
How are you, Karen? Can you hear me? I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, you can.
This sounds good.
Yes. Should we give you time to go home so you can check in?
I don't hear.
Oh, I know. My husband's in the same boat. Zoom is helps. You been?
Oh, good. Things haven't let up at all since the Tony Evers event.
Since?
The Tony Evers event.
Right.
Yeah, but that was, did you hear the final figure? Did you?
I think it was over 45,000. What was it?
49.
Oh, wow.
49.
That, I mean, isn't that amazing for Marshfield to do that? And it was so important. I mean, everybody knew it was important.
Yeah, I just, the turnout was fantastic. I enjoyed the committee a lot, Georgia. So thank you.
Well, I
Really,
enjoyed working.
that worked out well.
What I think is amazing is it's possible to get every Democrat in the county in one room.
It was a big room.
There's so few of us we can get in one room.
I think everybody. Well, so some places they can get them all in a broom closet.
I'm gonna have to get used to this angle. But anyway, I'm gonna be mostly sharing.
Oh, Karen
So,
Mitchell, how
I imagine you
Yeah.
guys appreciative.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I don't know if they had some need that they were going to be audited, but they had the people that paying the receipts.
Oh, yeah.
And I did the,
I'm the treasurer of the local committee.
okay.
It all has to be reported down to the bottom. So, yeah, you can't. So, yeah,
And
it's
I forget,
difficult.
you know, people had some mixed
went
feelings.
they went by my-
That were personal, some for the campaign, some for personal.
Right.
Anyhow, we had to go back, I had to go back and forth with Shelby several times. It wasn't just, and I thought, well,
Just
you
to
know,
get the
I just
documentation.
rounded it, I did all my taxes, I just rounded to the nearest dollar.
Right.
And that was not okay.
They don't do it. They don't do it that way. At the campaign finance, that was Wisconsin Ethics Commission Campaign Finance Division. You report if you're contributing or working during a campaign like the local ones, or every 2 months you have to have complete report to the penny, every money coming in, everything coming in, everything going out.
Really?
And so it's very precise. And they have a lot of oversight.
Well, I can tell you that we did not do that for the 2018 fundraiser. It was, and I don't know if it's because Tony wasn't in office then, or what
Well,
it was.
there is a fudge factor, actually, but you don't usually want to let people know about it, because then people just use it so much that it ends up on your reports that you rounded numbers, for example, and then they look at you. So you try very diligently to do all the reports exactly right, so that you don't trigger anything. But the fudge factor is that you can report anonymous donations of $5 or $10 or $1 or $2. But if you do too much of that, they will put you on their list. And so, yeah. So you just let people know, even if it's $1, they tell us, even if it's $1, you need to put everything that completely down.
Well, it just was
It's pretty
it was just a weird thing that we couldn't just settle on right away. That was nice. And our budget was pretty simple.
Yes. But now you know for the next time.
Well, I kept the files from 2018. I got the spot organized. If you want to do it again.
No, I thought the whole event was very well organized.
Went well.
A good executive team there.
Where we were, I was so nervous that we just had the news came.
Yeah, early the next morning or late that night or I wasn't even looking.
And we voted absentee, and boy, did we have a hard time getting it.
Oh,
It was just slow and coming.
really? Is that where you
Town of
usually live?
Lincoln.
Oh, Lincoln.
My sense is that the clerk was just nervous about doing everything correctly.
Yeah, well, I'm on this project called the Clerk Engagement Project. So there's a group called the Voting Rights Coalition. It's made up of League of Women Voters, Wisconsin Conservation Voters, Disability Rights Group, some other groups. It's a nonpartisan thing that is just encouraging people to vote. And they are now kind of assigned people all over the state, cities all over the state, to talk to their clerks periodically to just see how things are going. Because clerks have been getting death threats and, and the worst part of it for our clerk is that things might change in the courts, like 2 days before they're supposed to send out their ballots or something. And they're just under the gun then to try and change, as the rules have been changing. The rules have been just dynamic, been changing through the court battles that are going on. And the clerks are having a tough time, a really tough time, just keeping up with the rules.
Well, the fact that most of the referenda in the state are about townships changing to employment.
Yes, there was a lot of that.
Those are that.
And there's groups that want the school board elections now to be partisan.
Oh, well, they're de facto.
They already are.
Like the Supreme
I
Court.
don't know, you kind of hope that the focus will be on the kids, not on whatever political affiliation.
Yeah.
Oh, good Karen Mitchell in there.
Hey there.
Karen's with us. Barb Gillespie, I think maybe she wasn't going to join by Zoom, but she talked about having a recording.
She's not here either.
Is she in Utah?
She's in Utah.
Yeah.
I thought she might join by Zoom, but maybe she's just. It is
Maybe
recording.
if it's recorded, then she could.
Yeah, she could check that. When is this supposed to be? 11 o'clock, okay.
Darlene wanted me to introduce you, but I think everybody here does
Okay.
know you, and the same with Karen. But, but Georgette has had a successful financial, let's see, what would you,
Financial planning.
planning, yes, that's the word, business, and is now retired, as she pointed out to all of us, but is still very knowledgeable of financial planning in a more sustainable and thoughtful way. So this will be very enjoyable and enlightening.
Thank you, Sue.
So you know everyone on the table? Do you know Cammy?
I know Tammy. I think I've met the two people here.
I'm very close, this is Jan Close.
Yeah, you look so familiar to me. I'm sure we've met. Okay, so I have an iPad now. I'm totally retired. I have an iPad, and it isn't easy to kind of connect an iPad with a monitor. So, and the folks here have not done it before. It may not be possible. So as a result, and since we had a kindly request to be on Zoom, we are on Zoom, and I'm going to show some things on the Zoom screen. And I also have some handouts that I'll pass around. So thank you for your invitation to come. This is maybe my third time presenting here over the years. I've been in Marshfield for quite a few years now. And as Sue mentioned, I'm retired from work. My work was as a financial planner, CPA. And I started out and aiming toward that when my father passed away. I was in my 20s. It was a sudden death. And my mother had 9 file cabinets worth of material to go through that my father had put in his den. And they had a pretty traditional financial relationship. She had at that time, it was what do you call it, allowance. She had an allowance to spend on the family. We had a family of 6 kids. She worked very hard. She had been a trained secretary, legal secretary. She had double entry bookkeeping, all this kind of thing. And she knew to the penny what was going on with household stuff, but she really didn't have information about the bigger picture of the family's finances. And we didn't know what we were going to find we didn't know if there was debt mortgage on the house. We didn't know if they were in debt badly, or we really didn't know what our situation was. So we went through all those file cabinets together and ended up with a pretty good picture of where we were at. In the process of doing that, I found kind of a calling to help people with their finances. I decided, okay, that if it happened to my mom, it might very well be happening to a bunch of people out there like this, and that's not good. So maybe that's something I can do. And it was interesting. It was interesting to go through my family's history. That was 45 years ago. A few years after that, I was living here in Marshfield and got introduced to the idea of socially responsible investing when a group in Madison, the Community Foundation of Madison, presented a program about charitable investing. And it didn't have a name. It was sort of a new idea. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. So I drove down there to the program. And in the process of going through that, I realized that that was a good fit with everything that I was thinking about doing with my life. Remember, I'm in my 20s. And so I started aiming in that direction. When I got my licenses as a CPA and as a securities dealer, I By then, I had married a man with very young children. We had decided to start a college fund. And there were two mutual funds at that time that I thought were worthy of investment. And I put half of the money for their college into each of the two. There was the Appleseed Fund out of Chicago, and there was the Pax World Fund out of New Hampshire, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I ended up getting to know these folks who did this work because there were so few at that time who did the work. And felt very good about putting the kids' money in those, as one was more aggressive than the other. Then one was global and the other one was local. So it was interesting. And that money grew over the decades to be a very good contribution to the kids' college fund. And I was very pleased with that. So in the process, I learned a lot more about socially responsible investing, ended up being a professional in that field after quite a bit of soul searching and kind of professional searching about whether, yes, fine for us to do this work, but I'm not sure I'd recommend it to somebody else. I'm not sure it's fully fledged. I'm not sure if it's proper. As a CPA, I'm supposed to be independent. I'm supposed to find the best for my clients. And it took me some years to be convinced that this field was developed well enough to be something that I could recommend. And ended up doing that exclusively in the end because of my convictions about changing the world in a subversive way. Every dollar that you spend, and the other career I had was as a teacher of economics and accounting at the university here, and for 17 years. Chapter 1 was every dollar you spend or invest is a vote in the economy. It draws resources from something else. It puts the resources in something else. And so you're voting against something, and the thing you could be investing in, many things, and you're voting for the thing that you want to invest in. It's powerful stuff. And so that's what I did with my career for 27 years. Focused on SRI, socially responsible investing, for probably 17 years out of the 27 years. And myself, I was a socially responsible investor before even I started work. So it's been with me a long time. And it's inspired me in my work. It ended up, I could work as something I love to do rather than just something to make money. So that's a little background on me. Fast forward. When I started working in this field, there was, like I said, about two or three mutual fund families that could be chosen to work with. Maybe not even that. Now I'll show you what the situation is. SRI, socially responsible investing, is now known mostly as something else, but it has become the mainstream now. And there's access through pretty much, if you work with Fidelity, if you work with Schwab, if you work with your retirement plan, if you work with pretty much anybody, you have access to this kind of investing if you wish. You can see from the handout, and now I think I will share my screen here. This might, because we kind of ended up deciding to do this with the Zoom right before the program here. I may not be as well organized on my screen as I was in the handouts, but, and now this is weird. So I need to show you, if I can. I wasn't counting on this. The little thing, but I can't. Okay. So socially responsible investing now is known globally as ESG, and it stands for environment, social, and governance. ESG investing. There is now 17 in the United States alone, and the United States is kind of behind other like Europe and Australia a little bit. But in the United States, $17 trillion are invested with some kind of screen under ESG, or the alternative strategy, which is shareholder action. There's not only are people investing with social screens and environmental screens, but they are going to shareholder meetings, and they're doing the work to dialogue with management of the companies that they own to see if they can move the management principles that they're working with there. So we have two main strategies, the screening, ESG screening, and we have shareholder action. And you can see that this just goes back to 1995, but you can kind of see the recent ballooning growth of this work. And there's been a number of movements that have given rise to that. You can pretty much see what on the handout in the first thing, this little wheel. This is what ESG is. I'm sorry that it came out a little light here, but the E is over on the upper. If I can, now I've got to find that for Karen. See if I can find that. You can see that ESG is broken down into a number of different issues. I'm not sure if I'm going to do this well here. I may have to leave this off, but anyway, Karen, I can show you this. I'll send you this email I'll send it to you over, we're going this way. Oh, I see. It's just absolutely the opposite. Oh, that's great. Never mind. That's going to make me busy. I'll send you the handout. But anyway, it just shows that under environment, under governance, under social, there are a number of sub-issues that have brought a whole lot of people to the table to either do the screening in their investments or to have the social shareholder action going on. A lot of these groups, and in fact the beginning groups, were faith-based. The faith-based groups like the Quakers started way before I did to look at what their money was doing in the world. Pretty much every major religion has guidelines that tie the beliefs of that religion to how people use their money on a day-to-day basis. For the Presbyterians, I found this. I know there's different groups within the church, so I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but there is a thing called the Social Creed for the 21st century. And I didn't put it on your resource list because honestly, I wasn't sure if it was part of a group that this congregation is part of, but it was a very interesting read. You can find it online if you're interested. And it really breaks down a lot about what the different principles are in a social point of view, where the faith brings the folks who are involved in this. And actually, this was an interfaith effort. There were Baptists, there were Muslims, there were, here we can see kind of a list, Coptic Christians, Methodists, pulled together to come up with this social creed that can give you, if you're interested, can give you kind of, and I can give you the website if you want. But it does give you more of a structure for thinking about how to use your money. So on the second graph here, what you're seeing again is growth in the market for socially responsible investments. These are this is a graph by Morningstar, which is one of the primary analysts of mutual funds. They started tracking what they call sustainable funds a long time ago. They were one of the earliest, and they put out this landscape report that you can, if you want to, it's on your list of resources on the back. You have to kind of send them your name and your email address, but they will send you the mutual fund landscape report, which has quite a bit of information about mutual funds that are sustainable and gives you information about the performance of the funds. One of the charts I thought was interesting was this other one that I put on your handout. What Morningstar does is they take every mutual fund out there, pretty much, and they divide it into quarters. They divide the universe into best performing, next best performing, not so good performing, and worst performing. And so in this case, what you can see is, and I want to point out that this chart is for the U.S. large blend mutual funds, that the sustainable funds, this is the sustainable ones, within the large blend mutual fund universe are outperforming the average. And this has been pretty consistent over the last 3-5 years. This is the most recent report. So people are now recognizing and not arguing anymore about performance of sustainable investments. They're just not arguing about it. That doesn't mean that you give up all discernment here, because you can see that there, even though it doesn't show very well, that there are other funds in this same, the sustainable funds in the large blend US that aren't top performing. So, you have to figure that out. You have to figure out which ones, if you're concerned about performance, which most people are, that you're getting sustainable funds that are top performing. The reason I picked the large blend funds, because that's one category under mutual funds, is because Dee asked me to talk specifically about fossil fuel free investing today. It's an area that has been going on for some years now, and I don't know, maybe 10 years. And so, and it's basically disinvesting, at least initially, disinvesting in large carbon producing companies. And this is really kind of an interesting story, because another surge in socially responsible investment has come in because of racial justice issues. And there are generally surges depending on issues that come forward in society. And when that happens, at least at the beginning, people would be kind of thrown for a loop in the industry, because in addition to being concerned about the metrics, what you're actually trying to prove that you are doing, you also, because there's a principle involved here, most people who are into socially responsible investment turn it on themselves first. Sort of like, if I'm advising somebody, I need to be socially responsible about doing it. And so you don't use, what you see is people, another earlier example is indigenous peoples. A lot of corporations worked overseas and were very cruel to the indigenous peoples that they found. And so that issue came forward in our industry. A group called Calvert, which you might have heard of because it was the very earliest group of mutual funds that was socially screened. They decided they were going to apply a screen on all their funds to take out any companies that had been proven to be mistreating indigenous peoples where they worked around the world. To do that, they had to define behavior. You know, they had to decide what is it that is bad behavior. And so, again, being responsible, they went to the people around the world, and for 2 years, they held meetings with people all over the world to decide what is it we're screening out here. I mean, these companies are offering jobs, and that's what they say, you know. What do the people see in terms of the trade-offs here? And so they got a whole list of principles for their screens, and they came to the next conference of all of us, and they handed it out to everybody after all this work. And they said the Calvert funds will now be screening according to these principles, and we're sharing them with you in case others of you who are running funds out there would like to use these same principles. And that's the kind of industry we have, and why it's so magical, really, to go to these meetings. Lately, we've been bringing scholars. That's my last efforts in this group now, is to be one of the people in charge of giving out scholarships to our conferences to students. And when the young people come, they have no idea what they're getting into, because they're normally coming from business schools, MBA programs, top everywhere. I mean, top schools all over. And they cannot believe the different spirit that we have in our group. They just don't, it's so cutthroat in those programs that they just are amazed at what happens in our group. And so the reason I'm telling you this is when a new issue comes forward, like fossil fuel free, people will gather together and try and figure out, first of all, what does that mean? Does it mean companies that are producing carbon? Well, they all do. So is it utility companies, oil exploration companies, distribution companies? Is it companies that use a lot of energy that we're wanting to screen out? Those companies like utilities and other companies that are based on fossil fuels. So they actually came up with some different definitions so that the individual investors and groups that do the investing can choose what is the definition that meets your view of what fossil fuel free investing should be. So then they started working on developing mutual funds based on these principles. And they also started looking at what pulling out certain companies did to portfolios. Because we don't want a fossil fuel free portfolio to be riskier than the other large blend funds out there. And if you talk to professionals that don't know much about SRI, that is the main argument they will have. Look, if you tell me I can't invest in XYZ, then you're taking away a chunk of the universe that I can choose from. Therefore, your portfolio may have a lower performance and higher risk. This is still out there. This argument is still out there. So one of the first things that happens nowadays is that research is done on that very topic. And since fossil fuel free or investing has been around for a while, there's been a fair amount of research on that question. And if I can, this the one. No, I'm gonna, oh, here's an example. Okay, so the Journal of Environmental Investing did a project where they took 3 fossil fuel free portfolios, invested in 3 different frameworks and principles frameworks. And they looked back over time, because that's all we got is historical time, to see how, if these fossil fuel free portfolios, when compared with the non-fossil fuel free portfolios that were in the same balance and everything, to see their performance and their risk, their volatility. What they found in this report is that the fossil fuel free portfolio performed as well financially as the non-fossil fuel free portfolios. They didn't say more, they didn't say less. It's within the statistical range of the same. But that the fossil fuel free portfolios actually reduced the risk of the portfolio by about 20%. It was a big surprise to everybody, really. But what it did then is catapult fossil fuel free portfolios into the mainstream. I think that more than anything else, the professionals like at Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs and at the big companies who develop portfolios, they looked at that and they went, well, that's interesting. And what those big companies started doing was buying up the little companies that have historically been working all this time on the stuff we did. So Merrill Lynch, the really good companies, they started buying up people who really knew how to do this stuff, now that they were convinced that it worked. So that's the landscape now. You can see on page 2, what I've done is give you from the Morningstar report, because most people are invested in mutual funds. The Morningstar report that has come up with a list of the mutual funds. And remember, I am totally retired. I am not making 1 penny one way or another. Plus, I don't have any licenses. So you really shouldn't be listening to any recommendations. And I'm not recommending any of these. But I just wanted to show you that the people who are doing the analysis, Morningstar has it's an independent analyst of mutual funds. But because they've been tracking these funds, they have a list of the funds that have not only been leaders in fossil fuel investing and sustainable investing, but they have that over on the side, the very last column is a green leaf. Those and the smaller chart below are the mutual funds that have the strongest carbon screens on them. So if you're looking for investments, I would personally, if it were me, I would look at some of the bigger companies like PIMCO and BlackRock, because they're big names, but I would also look at some of the companies that have been doing this work for decades and really know what they're doing. Parnassus, Pax, Brown to some extent, TIA CREF is a teacher fund. Some of you may know TIA CREF. They've been doing this work for a long time. I can't say they've been doing it at the top of the commitment level, but they're good at what they do. And look, there's even Vanguard here. So if you invest in Vanguard funds and you're really concerned about the costs of your investment, which everybody should be, I think, Vanguard has a choice. And in fact, it has more choices than this. This is just a top choice.
So are these all load? Are they different between load and no load funds?
Yes, some will be load, some will be no load. So you'll just, and depending on how you're investing, most funds nowadays have a class, a share class that is no load. And you have to, whatever the hoops are, or connections you have to get no load, that you can do it. Trillium, you might see Trillium on that middle chart. Trillium is also very well known in our community of people. Calvert. So there's both the big companies that are now getting into it, and there's still some of the they're still pretty big now, the ones I've mentioned here, but they're dedicated, true blue, I'd call them, that are on this list. And finally, I gave you a list of places to look for more information. USCIF is our trade organization, the Forum for Social Investing, or Sustainable Investing now. USCIF is the U.S. organization that is part of a global organization of groups all over the world who foster this kind of investing now. Europe is way ahead of us. Anybody who has a retirement plan can invest in this way. Anybody, anywhere. In the UK, our kids have access to this kind of investing through their retirement plans. We've had every once in a while, like the clinic comes up with somebody is interested in having options in the retirement plan at the clinic. And there's been ups and downs with that. There's no real focus on this kind of investing available at the clinic. You can have a brokerage account in your retirement plan, and you can independently choose. And that, as far as I know, that's about it. There aren't any well-developed funds. And this is kind of one of the problems, that often you go to an advisor and the advisor says, well, Calvert funds are available because they're commission funds, and you're at an advisor whose income is based on commission, and because their organization has a service contract with Calvert because it pays commissions. But you don't have access to Parnassus, Trillium, PACS, because they have different approaches and they don't necessarily pay commissions. So in the end, sometimes depending on what kind of structure you are in as an investor, you don't have the ability really to have a well-balanced portfolio and a well-performing portfolio based on this kind of strategy of investing. Just the structure. The structure is a problem. So, but it's less and less of a problem all the time. Because if you go to your advisor and you say, I'm interested in ESG investing, what can you do for me? They now, at least, they know that it's okay. They might resist, and they might say some things like, no, I think that's too risky or something like that. If they do, then you know they're of a very different point of view. Because most of the people who are at least open to ESG investing know what resources they have. If they can't do it, they've got people who can. So that's where we're at right now in the industry. If you wanted to see, this is one of the things I wanted to do now that we have this capability up here. Let me see if I can do this. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to go to this one tool that I think could be helpful to some of you. So this group called As You Sow. Has anybody ever heard of it before? Because it's been around a long time. It's a faith-based group, originally anyway. They put together a big project, a lot of work here in this little tool. But if you plug in your mutual funds that you're invested in, you can find out how it compares to a fossil fuel-free portfolio and why, and how, why. So would anybody like to give me the name of a fund? It doesn't have to be one you're invested in, but does anybody have a favorite fund? Would you like to know how it's doing in terms of fossil fuels?
How about Prime Cap of Vanguard?
Vanguard Prime Cap.
I'm afraid to know.
You are. You're a brave man. Okay.
There it is.
Which one?
Admiral. ADM.
Not much.
Not much?
Fossil fuel exposure of 2.74%.
Is that good?
With investments in top 200 carbon reserve owners and top 30 coal-fired utilities. Places the fund in the C tier. So it got a C, which is a lot better than a lot of the funds.
I'm a C student in general.
Well done. You didn't know. But here are some of the investments, specific investments that they have that you wouldn't find in a fossil fuel free.
Those, so Pioneer.
Pioneer has EOG Resources and Glencore.
It's done so, shoot, really.
They have a lot of reserves. They have a lot of oil. Now, when it comes to reserves, there's some concern from a financial point of view that 80% of the reserves that we have has to stay in the ground for us to meet our Paris goals on carbon use. Because of that, we have what we call, what do they call, abandoned, no, legacy. There's a lot of words for it, but it's, there's a better word for it. Let me see if I can find it. Anyway, there is the company is based on its value on these reserves in part. And so the way some of the shareholder action is to try and get companies to also provide a value if those reserves were not going to be used, if they were going to stay in the ground. And the companies are, most of them, resisting that because they base their value on the current value of those reserves, which cannot come out. So,
I have a question.
Yeah.
A little bit off. All of this data that you give here is based on data as of December 31st, 2021. Well, as long as you didn't put your money in a savings account, almost any money you put anywhere in the market between 2010 and 2021 would have doubled or tripled in value because the market went up dramatically during that period of time after the recession of 2008 to 2009.
right, yeah.
So the question is, you're just saying is that sustainable investing is a good bet in a rising market. The question is, how did it do in 2022, which has not been a rising market?
Well-
Is the statement that the volatility is lower true in 2022 as it was?
My
in
guess is,
2021?
I don't know, because these studies were done on historical data, just as you said.
Right.
And so, and we did have an extremely volatile year.
We had a bad year. I wouldn't call it
We had a
volatile.
horrible year,
Terrible
although
year.
it is turning.
Volatile
Well,
is
it's been an
investor
interesting year.
speak for things didn't go well, but it's not volatile, it's bad. I mean,
Well, let's do this. Let's pick one of these top funds. From the sustainable funds with low carbon risk. Let's pick Brown Advisory. Let's go to like Yahoo, or where would you go to just get your information? Motley Fool or Yahoo or something.
I try to stay away from that stuff.
Well,
I
Morningstar.
hire people to do that for me.
Yeah, I know. Okay, but I'm just trying to be fair with what you're saying, because I think it's a very good question. Let's go to Yahoo Finance. This is not my usual thing either. And honestly, I don't, but I mean, it'll be interesting. I haven't looked. And honestly, 1 year's worth of performance to me is not.
No, I
It's not a key.
understand 1 year, but the point is that all of these years you're talking about are up or
Yes,
rising
no,
years.
I know.
What happens in a down year compared to?
Well, everything's been going up. Everything's been.
Right,
Right.
but this year, for example,
I
energy
haven't-
investing's done really well. I mean, if you put
Yeah,
money
you're right.
in
And these-
ExxonMobil, you would have made a killing during a down market this year.
I did actually, I will admit to it.
I mean,
I don't know
Well,
what to do-
okay,
I don't know
so
what to do with that one. I
If
feel
you are
horrible.
concerned about short-term volatility, which I think is very reasonable, you probably don't want to invest in a lot of stocks. I mean, first of all, you have to look at the balance in your portfolio, okay? So, but let's just pick let's pick a large, I'm not even sure. Okay, let's do the prime cap, because we've been talking about prime cap. And it's pretty good with, okay, so prime cap Admiral share.
I don't want to know how much I lost this year.
Well, it's coming back, it's coming back.
It's a closed fund, by the way.
Oh, well, that helps too. Okay, so this is what prime cap looks like year to date. See, it came way down, but it's coming back up. So that's that's the landscape of this year. That's a pretty good picture of if you're invested in big companies. Now let's take the top one on this list. So to see if you can remember that one. I might be able to compare. I probably can, but I've forgotten how to do that. But let's put in the other one. So this is kind of a good quality large blend fund, looks to me.
Mhm.
And now let's put in Brown Advisory Sustainable Growth and just see. Year to date. Well, it doesn't look to me like it's gone up as much.
it's lost
it
as
looks
much,
like-
but
it
it
looks
hasn't
like
gone up
it-
as much in the last quarter as prime cap did.
No,
But it sure was
it
high.
hasn't
at the beginning of the
rebounded
year.
at the same speed, but it's coming up. This is pretty fair. I think this is pretty fair rating. Way to look at it. What else could we look at? Is there anybody else who would like to throw something in?
Well, the biggest one is Parnassus Core Equity, why don't you put PRBLX?
Okay, yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, we should stay within the same categories.
same thing.
Yeah, it hasn't rebounded at the same rate.
Hasn't really rebounded at all.
I mean, typically, Georgette, once you look at beta, I don't see beta for the last 3 times, I haven't seen the beta parameter.
Oh, yeah.
The last 3, the 3 you've had up have not had the beta parameter. Wouldn't you use that to gauge volatility?
Yes, you're right. I don't know why
I don't know why it doesn't.
it's
says
not
NA.
available on this. But you can kind of see the beta with, I mean, the mountains are the beta. These are stock funds, so it's a large blend. Let's try another one.
Or year-to-date return minus 21.
Yeah,
Great year.
yeah, it was bad. Not the greatest year, but this one definitely didn't perform as well, or at least hasn't bounced back as well.
Are any of these balanced funds? Would that be a good comparison? Are any of these balanced
Yeah,
funds?
it might be if we could find one.
That might be a good representation.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I see mid caps, small caps. Global. Well, let's look at the TIA correct. They tend to be more conservative. I don't know, maybe not with this fund or not. I've never really invested in it. Social choice equity. Oh, now that one looks more like the first one, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, although the y-axis keeps changing on these, so it's a little hard to gauge.
Right, right. But it's pretty close to the same, negative 20.56. Yeah, you're right. It's hard to look at it. Anyway, you can, this is the thing. There are all kinds of funds out there now under the universe of social screening. So you have to kind of decide on what's a good fit for you.
And the current performance does not reflect what the future is
Yes.
going to be either.
No, I mean, these numbers that you see under 2021 total return, you can pretty much kiss that goodbye.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly did not want to indicate, because I usually, personally, I use my socially responsible investments for long-term investing. If you want short-term, well, I'm a pretty conservative investor overall. If you want shorter term, I'm be more likely to invest in the CD than invest in affordable housing, for example, something like that. And that brings up a good point, which is there are socially or ESG screened investments in every asset class right now. There are bonds, there are CDs, there are savings accounts, there are venture capital funds, very extremely volatile things. There are funds that are only available to investors who are accredited, meaning you have to have $1 million in assets apart from your house. And
Crypto?
that's beyond me. That's beyond me. I'm sorry, I don't know much about crypto, so I have to say. But
That was probably a good position to take.
yeah. Well, crypto, yeah, probably now is a good time to get into crypto. No, never mind.
It was
Didn't say
great to
that.
be ignorant of crypto in 2022.
I didn't say that. Yeah, no, people who invested in crypto are hurting right now. But
Can I just ask a question about that?
please do. Oh, yeah, really?
Because
Maybe
it
somebody
seems-
here knows anything about
Yeah.
crypto. I don't.
It seems like there's two, well, we're talking about sustainable investment. The focus is no longer just on return on investment, It's a return on investment that's not necessarily financial. You're investing in aspect
I like
of
that.
society that you want to see that grow as much as you want to see your money grow.
Right.
And I'm wondering about the people, a lot of the people who are investing in crypto are not investing in it for it's like a subversive, revolutionary way of subverting.
Yeah, sometimes I
wealth.
wonder what kind of world they see.
Yeah,
At least the beginning. I mean, I knew that when our group started up, the kinds of things that they were concerned about. And it was common, there was some common bond there. Also, they weren't very well versed in financial principles of management. They were more interested in the return, the social return or the environmental return of what they were doing with their money. And they saw value in that. And now they're calling it a concessionary investment.
Yeah.
Because
almost like a donation.
right, and there are, for example, we have an investment in a community development fund out of Madison. It's called the FCI, Forward Community Investment. It's been around for decades. A lot of churches invest in them because what they do is they take the money, they give you an interest rate, they give us 2% a year. And you don't have to take it if you don't want to. You can take 1%, you can take no percent. It could be a gift for as long as you want, forever, or for a certain period of time. And they will take the money, and what they do exclusively is invest in nonprofits around the state of Wisconsin. And they're capacity builders. They help the nonprofits build their work. They were one of the investors that helped our YMCA expand. And they get now a lot of millions and millions every year from tax market. I'm losing the word. From the government. And they also were one of the ones when they went through the second round of the stimulus. Remember, if you remember with the pandemic, the first round of stimulus went out and it went to all these big banks everywhere, and there was an outcry. And they said, why should these big banks be making money off of the taxpayers here? And so then the second round was focused on this group called the CDFIs, Community Development Financial Institutions. And the money went out to them because they have a history of working with individual neighborhoods and people all over in a close way. And smaller groups, smaller businesses, smaller organizations. And so the Forward Community Investments in Madison works with nonprofits all over the state of Wisconsin. And now, because they've been around a long time and they have the confidence of people, the government is also giving them tax credit money and stimulus money to forward their work.
2% guaranteed?
Yeah. We can invest it,
Wow.
now it doesn't, it sounds like a decent return.
For a savings account in the bank, it's huge.
Well, I just remember this was some years back, I remember talking to the founder of this FCI. And she said, we just had a presentation to the, I don't know what it was like 5 years ago, we made a presentation to the Overture Center Foundation in Madison, the big arts complex. And we wanted to ask them to invest some of their endowment in FCI. And they rejected us. And then they put their money in with Bernie Madoff. And they lost pretty much all of it.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow. So to me, that was a good story because it basically shows you that there's an impulse, there's two impulses. There's an impulse to do good and there's a greed impulse out there too with regard to money. And so you gotta just know what you're dealing with inside, what you're dealing with, you know. And if you recognize that there's a social return and that a social return actually might return to you too, you know, what do they call that? Enlightened self-interest or whatever they call that. Or if it's just a social return that you're enjoying and wanting to help, that if you donate money, you can also donate it to something that gives you a return, somewhat of a return if you want. We're also invested in a Madison company called Invest that is a micro lending fund. They take people's money and they send it out around the world to other micro lending organizations that help. They give out loans like $300 or $200 or $100 for somebody to buy a washing machine to start a washing business or make tortillas or, you know, whatever. Buy a sheep or whatever that is. And it's a very volatile return because you only get money back if people are paying back. I shouldn't say it. You don't guarantee, you're not guaranteed, I should say, any return on this investment. It's a limited partnership, but we've been getting steady 4 to 6% returns from Invest since we started. It doesn't have to be that way. We're not dependent on it. So there's just a lot of things out there that you can explore depending on what you care about and a lot of need. Oh, another thing that I would mention is that this stuff has become so mainstream now that sorry, that's our kids. I don't have to be doing it. Oh, Carrie. Well, anyway. Jerry Toyoma's on there. And Lauren Elke. Hi. So there's a whole nother level of security coming with these investments, I guess you could say. That the government now, because it's become very popular to say you're doing ESG investments, the government is now interested. And there's a lot of concern about what they call greenwashing. Big companies coming out saying that they're doing ESG investment, or small company. And then because it's a kind of a hard connection for people, it's one of those things where you can get ripped off. So they are putting all companies now who are saying they do this kind of work under additional scrutiny, reporting, and so forth in the future.
Very good.
That's how big we've gotten.
I'm really intrigued with this idea of, you've got the greed, abject greed or avarice or, building personal wealth, whatever you call it, and then the social interest. We've got a program in the Presbyterian Church started by our synod that I'd love to pick your brain more on it sometime, but it's called restorative giving.
Okay.
And it's a recognition that as white people, we have wealth that we should not have. And this is a way to simply surrender it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's as far away from the greed thing as you can get. But I'm really intrigued by this holding both in some sort of conversation or tension with each other that might even it might be more profitable than pure greed, and it might be more socially profitable than just simply putting down your money and walking away.
Right. I think your word tension is a good one, because it's kind of explaining internal tension. Well, I'm not sure when I get. My dad always said, "Give till it hurts." Yeah. So there is like that yogic tension.
Yeah.
You sort of want to help, but you also have a self-protection or family protection or whatever thing going on. And for me, it's always just been a balance, and everybody has a different balance point, I think. I'm gonna put you in touch with Pot Liquor Capital. Yeah. They are doing some really good work on racial justice investing.
Uh-huh.
And there's a bunch of people now who are doing it.
It's a growing field, and
Yeah.
you know, from the greed side of you, I think there would be a lot of money to be made in building that part of our economy that's gone underfunded, undersupported for so many years.
Well, it goes back to all that, it's the same trajectory kind of, we have to define what the hurt has been.
Yeah.
We have to define how to restore, how to help that hurt in an effective way. And then we have to turn it into things that people can do.
Yeah.
And so if it's fossil fuel free, it's been taking, it actually really took off fast. I think it's been 10 years before you build up this infrastructure and do the analytical work, what do they call it? There's been a lot more accountability now about, okay, you can't just go out and help people necessarily. You want to be able to prove that you've helped people, you know? And for somebody to be willing to invest in you because they have choices. They can put their money somewhere else that is really shown to be effective. And so now we've got metrics involved, accountability, and that's all built into the system now.
Is there an ESG investment club in Marshfield?
There was a women's group that was very interested in that, hits and misses. They don't think they're still around.
Yeah, they're still around.
Are they still around?
Yeah.
I've talked to them a number of times over the years. It's been a long time.
But it's women.
It was,
Shoot.
I think they've had men, but investment club, it's been a long time since I had any interaction with them or any other investment. There wasn't a guys investment club as well, as I recall.
ESG?
Not ESG, but there was in Stevens Point, because I did talk to them a few times. Mixed. Gosh, male, female. So yeah, you'd have to look, there's an Investment Clubs of America, and they have that was kind of interesting seeing them evolve with ESG. The guy who was helping to run that and ran their newsletter and everything, his daughter was interested in ESG a long time ago, and he was poo-pooing it basically, and he was, okay, I'll take it. And then he started writing editorials about his process of following his daughter's investments and stuff like that. Anyway, we've come a long way, and I appreciate your interest. So,
Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
we're-
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining in. Hi, Jerry. Nice to say hi to you guys.
Hi, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Laura's already off.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks for coming.
Everybody was, Jerry was at church and so was Laura.
You wanna go to lunch?
Better bring your guitar.
Karen has moved, so.
Yeah,
No.
Karen was in Minneapolis.
Maybe.
Okay.
I might just come and sing this stuff.
That'd be cool.
What do you think? I mean, who do we
Thank you,
have?
Georgette.
Well,
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
we might have
Thanks for your
Naomi.
questions too. I appreciate
love
it. I
that.
like going after the hard questions.
Yeah.
What the future brings.
No,
Yeah.
but I,
Very good.
I don't know how to
it's,
do that.
it's
I
important to
don't
know
I'm not up on that
how
system.
this kind of investing does in a down market. Because if a down market recovers more poorly than the rest of the market does, and then we've only been through one down cycle. From the data that you're
Well,
showing.
we can actually look back. We
Yeah.
can look back further and see.
Before
Like
2000.
2008 and things like that. Yeah, we can do it.
So the question is how does this approach do?
Okay, Jerry, I'm gonna turn you off.
Including markets that are always going up.
Do you know how to do
Yeah,
that?
which is not something,
And you'd have to compare the same kind of investment. You know, if you're going for large.
And I think you can just push this red button.
Bonds, mixed bonds of stock,
And then
and